In this lesson, we'll be programming a PHP script that outputs data a user has inputted into a form on the same page as the form. The PHP script will also do some basic validation that we'll program into a function. We'll do the following to all inputted data. We'll pass variables through PHP's HTML special characters function to make sure data is transmitted securely. We'll use the trim function to strip any unnecessary characters such as extra space, tabs, or breaks inserted into the input fields. We'll use the strip lashes function to remove any backslashes from user inputted data. This helps add an additional layer of security and protects data integrity. Before we get started, I'll show you a demonstration of the end result. You'll notice right now, under the heading User Input, there's no information next to the field labels. When I press Submit, we can see that the data that was inputted into the form has now been outputted on the same page next to these text labels. Since the PHP variables are sent to the same page as the form, we'll need to use the post method coupled with our form action set to the super global variable server. We'll get to that in just a second. So let's go ahead and get started. The file used in this lecture is available in the Downloads folder. The HTML you see here is just a basic table that contains all our form elements. So right now, there's no PHP in the script. You can take a moment to go through it. It's just a form, and inside the form there's a table, and it contains all of our form labels, our inputs, and our buttons. We've already named each input, so we can see here, next to the text label name, we have the name input. And this input has the name attribute set to name. Next we have website. And website, this input has its name attribute set to website, followed by position, experience. Now, employment status, we've set it to e-status, just to be more efficient. Comments, the name is set to comments. And then we have our two buttons. The first thing we'll do is create our form action. So what you're going to do is you're going to type the following into the action attribute in your form element. Okay, so it's a little bit long. The global variable server will send the submitted data to the same file as the existing file. We've embedded the global variable server in an HTML special characters function. And this provides an additional layer of security by preventing anyone from injecting malicious JavaScript code into the transmitted data. So it's important to include that. And you'll see that the global server variable is set to PHP self. So this is what allows us to transmit this data to the same page that we're working on. And that's going to output the information on the same page as well. Our method is already set to post, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's go ahead and start with our PHP script. So create your PHP tags, we'll need to define the variables that we'll use to contain the inputted form data. So enter the following variables, and we're going to set each one of these variables to an empty value for now. And you'll see that the variable names we've used are the same names as the names that we've given our input fields. Now we'll have to create a function to validate the inputted data. And so you're going to go ahead and create this function. Okay, so we've called this function val, and this function has one argument called data. There's 3 statements in this function. The first statement will trim the data, so it'll remove any unnecessary spaces, and then it'll remove any unnecessary backslashes using strip lashes. And we're securing the data by using the HTML special characters function as well. So these are the 3 basic ways we'll be validating the data. So next we'll create an if statement that checks whether the user has submitted the form. And we'll do this using the server request method you'll see in a second. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and type in the following block of code. So you can see that we've set the global server variable here to request method, which equals post. And what this does is it checks to see if any data has been posted. And the only way data would have been posted is if somebody had clicked the submit button. Now, if the data has been posted, then we've created a series of variables. Remember, we defined these variables up here and we set it to an empty value. Well, if the form has been submitted, these variables will now take on new values. So the name variable will take the value in the name field. The website variable will take the information and put it into the website field, and so on. And you can see that all this data will be retrieved using the post superglobal variable. Now that information will be stored in our new variable. We've also enclosed our post superglobal variable in the function that we created, the val function. And so each variable is going to be validated using the 3 validation techniques we'd specified in the function. Okay, the last thing we need to do is just create the output, and we'll do that using the PHP echo statements. So this was the demo file. I'm just going to switch now to this new file that we're working with. So enter this block of code underneath your form, your closing form tag. And this is fairly straightforward. It's just a series of echo statements that is going to output the information that the user is inputted. So once you've entered that block, save your file and refresh your page. And just test to see if it works. Okay, it looks like it's working fine. So we can see that all the data that was inputted into the form has now been outputted on the same page. In the next lesson, we'll be working with additional types of validation techniques.